At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. The Department of Defense is working with Google to help secure America's digital defense systems, from establishing cloud-based zero-trust solutions to deploying the latest AI technology. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American innovation.
I'm Julia Turner, and this is the Slate Culture Gabfest, putting the Asinine in Astronaut edition. It's Wednesday, April 16th, 2025, and on today's show, we're talking about Your Friends and Neighbors, the new Apple drama featuring Jon Hamm in his first lead TV role since Mad Men. He's once again a dysfunctional Manhattan executive with a wife and kids in the burbs, but the show has a few interesting twists for us. Then, a Minecraft movie, the smash hit film adaptation of the massively popular sandbox video game, which gives Jack Black a star turn and may save movie theaters, at least for now. We'll discuss the film's raucous success and whether it makes any sense to normies. Finally, we'll examine the all-female Blue Origin flight, which on Monday sent Katy Perry and Gayle King, among others, on an 11-minute journey past the Kármán line. We'll discuss this stunt and what kind of step it represented and in what direction for womankind. Joining me today is Dana Stevens. Hello, Dana.
Hello, Julia. Welcome back.
I'm so glad to be back. Thank you guys for holding down the fort. And I say you guys because also here is Stephen Metclaf. Hello.
Hey, Julia.
The Troika, reunited.
Yeah, the hat trick.
Very excited to be back. The new Jon Hamm vehicle, Your Friends and Neighbors, aims to be a juicy send-up of the 1%. Hamm's character, Andy Cooper, or Coop, has a swanky home and a country club membership and a Maserati, and then he loses his wife to a hot neighbor and then his job after he bangs a junior employee. And then, in desperation or whatever kind of economic hardship it is that allows you to fret about money but keep the Maserati, he turns to crime and begins pilfering fancy watches and other high-end items from his neighbors' luxury homes. The show, which co-stars Amanda Peet, Olivia Munn, and others, was created by Jonathan Tropper, the novelist turned screenwriter behind Banshee and Warrior, and co-run by Craig Gillespie, the director of I, Tonya and Dumb Money. It has already been renewed for a second season, so we've got some time to explore this universe. Before we dive into its charms or lack thereof, let's listen to a clip.
I think it's a little tricky when you show up on a day that isn't your day.
I took him out for ice cream. My God.
It's confusing for him. Boundaries are there for a reason.
Boundaries? You mean like monogamy?
Really, Coop? It's been almost 2 years. When are you going to stop playing that card?
I don't know. What is the statute of limitations on adultery?
Probably less time than you've spent playing with sad cuckold.
Who says cuckold?
You know what?
Who are you?
If you were even remotely self-aware, you'd realize these things don't happen in a vacuum. I mean, you could maybe take a little portion of responsibility for your side of it.
Okay, I'm sorry, but you sleep with Nick. You kick me out of this place. I'm forced to pay for this entire mess, and I'm the one that's not being responsible.
I'm not doing this right now.
Oh, well, it's really no fun doing it alone.
Steve, I am curious where you would place this show in the pantheon of suburban male ennui, or whether you'd put it there at all. What'd you make of Jon Hamm being back in the saddle?
I mean, everything is a metaphor in this town, Julia. It's a line from this ridiculous TV show. I mean, I like that you start with suburban male upper crusty ennui. The place I started was the swimming pool and the voiceover, which, brings you into the world of The Graduate, which has the swimming pool, but not the voiceover. Sunset Boulevard, which has the swimming pool and the voiceover. And of course, the great Cheever short story, The Swimmer. I mean, the swimming pool is this sort of symbol of affluence and artificiality and a life in stasis, and the kind of benumbing effect of like the body floating beneath the surface. This tries to milk all of that, but it's a pretty attenuated version of it, isn't it? The first problem I have with it is problem I'm having with a lot of things these days, the untimeliness. I mean, sort of before November 2024 and after November 2024, and things look differently from the vantage point of post November 2024. Who are these people and why would I care about them, especially now? There's no specificity here whatsoever. It's so preposterously generic, beginning with the Jon Hamm character. Problem number one is, why do we care that this man has lost his wife and his job? There's no effort to draw him in such a specific way or a way that's particular to this person's aspirations and suffering that makes me care about him. He's actually terribly generic. He's just a guy who got all the stuff and has discovered the stuff is empty. But the truth is, did he really discover it was empty? I don't know that he was that discontented before he discovered he was a cuckold and then got fired. It's just the story of a hedge fund guy who's completely in and of himself uncharming and not at all sympathetic, who happens to get fired and is finding a way to cope by breaking into these houses. What this really reminded me of wasn't really the suburban ennui genre exactly. It reminded me of a very, it is possible to do this, right? This is like a Dante-esque portrait of a totally soulless community, and thereby a satire on all of the supposed aspirations we've been suffering from for the past 40 years. I'm fine with all of that. The problem is, a very good version of this came out a summer or two ago in the novel The Guest, right? And the thing, which is the story of a young woman who's nihilistically making her way through the Hamptons. But the difference is, you sensed that someone had actually been to a specific place, seen specific people in that specific place, and with a gimlet eye and an enormous amount of care and precision had portrayed them in their reality. I find nothing real about this. So weirdly, broadly drawn. No character is sympathetic or interesting. None of them breaks out of the stereotype from which they were hatched. There's also a problem of there's like a kind of literary self-consciousness to a lot of the dialogue and a lot of the characterization. And I gave it 3.5 to 4 episodes. I kept trying. I'm like a really emphatic thumbs down on this.
Interesting. All right. Dana, how about you? Did old Jon Hamm charm you at all?
I mean, I wish I had an interesting counterpoint to offer. I pretty much agree with everything Stephen said. I gave it even a little bit more of a chance. I actually, if you include second screen style watching, which I really don't like, I don't love having a show on that you don't have to pay attention to, but this is very much a show made in that mode. And if you go by that standard, I guess I've watched the whole thing. But I guess my statement about this show is, if you watch the credit sequence, you will understand everything the show is up to. First of all, the only human being you see in the credit sequence is Jon Hamm. And I think the only thing the show really has going for it is we have Jon Hamm, like his both the familiarity that people have with him from Mad Men and his innate kind of charisma and, kind of self-deprecating charm is the only thing that's holding the show together. And the credit sequence just shows Jon Hamm's character striding down these sterile Westchester streets with this kind of special effect of all these fancy material goods, luxury cars and bottles of wine, and I'm not sure what else, like tennis courts exploding around him. So the idea is sort of like handsome Jon Hamm alone makes his way through a sterile suburb in which material goods are, destroying themselves and kind of exposing their own emptiness. Like, it's very We Get It. And it is very much what every episode of the show feels like. Like, it's big news that hedge fund managers in Westchester are materialistic. I don't think I need many episodes to get that idea through my head.
Man, you guys are like turning me into a defender of this show, which I'm not sure I'm cut out for, but I guess I liked it a bunch more than you did for a couple of reasons. I agree with the critique that the portrait of the community is very generic. It feels, I did not watch Desperate Housewives, but it feels like the few episodes of that I did watch, like kind of Hollywood lot rich rather than specific sociological rich. I think you're right about The Guest, Steve. That Emma Cline book really nails a particular world. Succession obviously had a lot of fun nailing the particular cuts of the different sweaters in this. Oh, he's going to steal a Kelly Birkin bag, like they're an Hermes Birkin bag. I've heard of that, like it's the on the nose version of richness. I do think the performances save it. And I actually think some of them are good. Like, I do think Jon Hamm is he's meant to be a TV leading man, and he is compelling doing all this goofiness and garbage skulking through people's backyards. I've always loved Amanda Peet. I think Amanda Peet is just one of the treasures of Hollywood, and I think she's given more to do here. It's her story too, actually, like her midlife crisis of boredom and confusion gives her something to do. He's meant to be humanized by the relationship with his mentally ill sister, who will not stop just breaking into song all the time, which anyway, I'm mustering a rousing defense here.
Can I break in about the mentally ill sister?
Please do.
So although it's only a subplot in the show and probably a silly point to cavil about, it continued to bother me throughout the show that the mentally ill sister who could just barely cope with life seemed to be coping with life perfectly fine.
The only sane person in this whole crazy place is the crazy one. Ah! Olivia Munn too is kind of fun as someone else who's fallen out of the coupledom and become his neighborhood fuck buddy. And the world just keeps expanding. It expands to encompass this housekeeper who catches him and then wants in on the con. And it just keeps, I don't know. I feel like it's building something that is soapy and full of plausibly interesting characters. And I don't know. I kind of could see people going for it. I agree that it's not the Pitt, my current standard for the greatest accomplishment in the arts, but it had some charm for me.
I will agree that there's a lot of actors who are overqualified for this script who are doing the best they can with it. Seriously. But that's kind of what prestige TV is now. Like, I'm not surprised at all that there are name actors who are good at their jobs, who are trying to do things with these characters. But everybody just feels like such a stereotype of a world that, as Steve points out, just doesn't even feel like a world of our time. It's almost like a pre-2008 financial crisis kind of place.
Yeah, Dana, that's exactly it. Beautifully put. It's not that it's pre-2024. It certainly is that, but it's pre-2008. It's exactly right. I mean, a satire like this kind of works if there's some part of even liberal artsy dweebs like me who still secretly, in some shameful compartment of my soul, kind of wants the thing being satirized or anatomized, right? Or something like that. But if to this point after 2008 and 2024, if you haven't killed off that part of yourself, I scarcely know what to say. I mean, it's just, the other thing I would ask is, there are so many pockets of dead air in this. There's so many inert scenes, which are like, do you want to drive? No, you drive. Are you sure? Can I drive? Oh, no, you drive. Go ahead and drive. Like, they don't further the plot, reveal character. They do nothing. The amount of kind of dead air in this thing is really extraordinary. I mean, I can't exaggerate it enough. It's just dead on the operating table, if you ask me.
You know what's interesting about the 2008 thing and the Succession comparison I just made? One of the lines that I keep thinking about post Trump's second inauguration, is Logan Roy saying, "You are none of you serious people." Like, I actually feel like that line from Succession is the one that keeps like clanging like a bell for me as I watch what is happening in our government. And that was a show about the hyper rich, but it was specifically about the hyper rich and their intersection with our government and politics and media ecosystem and all of the things that the inequality in our culture touches on. And the whooshing of that not being present in this show, I think you're right, gives it a toothlessness that maybe makes it feel more like just a soap or exposes some of its other weaknesses and flaws.
Yeah, the biggest thing that's going to happen over the course of this show, and I think it's already been okayed for a second season, is that Jon Hamm's character will come to a realization that he's kind of already come to by that first swimming pool voiceover monologue we talked about, which is, oh, this life is empty and worthless and I should seek something more worthwhile. It's hard to see how the repercussions of what's going on in the show that are larger than that.
Yeah. Well, and we'll see. I've watched 4 and he hasn't gotten back to the pool yet. So I don't know if the pool is the finale of this season or, it starts forward and then brings him back up to the present. So, all right. Well, the show on Apple is Your Friends and Neighbors. It stars Jon Hamm. You'll have plenty of it to watch should you so desire.
A paper shadow in a house of stone.
Our next sponsor is Audible, and the occasion for the sponsorship is Sunrise on the Reaping, which is the new audiobook in the Hunger Games series by Suzanne Collins. We discussed, I think, the very first Hunger Games movie on this show. I read the whole original series, and my son has just started them. So this is, I remember, a very addictive world to join, and I'm now witnessing that in the next generation. So in Sunrise on the Reaping, you can hear Jefferson White narrate the story of the survivor, young Hamish Abernathy, and revisit the world of Panem 24 years before the original Hunger Games series. So it's a prequel. I use Audible all the time, and this book will be available there. Welcome to the 50th Hunger Games. Experience the worldwide best-selling series in a whole new way. Go to audible.com/sunrise and listen with the world.
Maybe you and your dog are a little skeptical about trying a new dog food after trying so many others. But if so, Spot and Tango could be a real game changer. Once you make the switch to Spot and Tango, you will see how it makes a difference. Spot and Tango is a pet food company that creates custom plans based on your dog's age, breed, weight, and activity level, so you know that they're getting the nutrition they need. Spot and Tango was nice enough to send me a sample. I filled out a pretty simple to fill out form about my dog's basic needs, age, etc. And they sent me a sample of a custom food designed specifically for her. I should mention that my dog's age is quite old. She's 14 now, a few months past 14, and only in her later years has gotten very picky. Used to eat everything in sight. Now makes sure that she wants something and likes it before she will really dig in. And Spot and Tango was a hit. So I want to thank them for sending me a sample of some food that is both the proper nutrition for a dog of her age and specific needs, and a food that she will actually eat. Spot and Tango is now offering an exclusive deal for our listeners. For a limited time, you can go to spotandtango.com/culture and use the code culture to get 50% off your first order. That's spotandtango.com/culture, code culture to get 50% off your first order. spotandtango.com/culture, code culture. It's the time in the show when we discuss business. We decided, because it's become such a popular topic of conversation, at least on my social media, to talk about the finale of The Pitt, the show on HBO Max starring Noah Wyle as an ER doctor on a 15-hour shift, with each hour of the show being 1 hour of that shift. The first season came to an end this past week, and it was one of those rare shows that everybody seemed to talk about in real time and respond to as it was happening. I don't know how many times I saw mysterious statements in my social media about devastating things that happened on The Pitt. As a result, we decided to talk partly about the last episode, partly just about what the season has been like and why it's been such a hit and such a kind of viral sensation. So if you're a Slate Plus member, you'll hear that as a separate segment in your feed. If you're not, you can always become one by going to slate.com/culture plus. When you're a member, you get bonus segments like the one I just described. Lots of other shows have them too. And you get unlimited access to all of the writing and all the podcasting on slate.com. Most of all, you'll be supporting our show and the shows of all our brilliant colleagues. These memberships are part of what keeps Slate going. So please sign up today at slate.com/culture plus. Or you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify by clicking Try Free at the top of our show page. Along with our normal business for this week, I wanted to issue a small correction and apology for a misstatement I made in last week's show. In talking about the Hulu show Dying for Sex, I mistakenly said that its co-creator Elizabeth Merriweather had also worked with Jenny Slate on Obvious Child. I was mixing her up with Gillian Robespierre, who was a friend of Jenny Slate's that made Obvious Child with her and directed it. In fact, Liz Merriweather had nothing to do with Obvious Child. That was actually a mistake I noticed in the room while we were recording, but it still somehow made it on air, so sorry about that. Steve, I think you had one of these to mention on this week's show as well.
Yes, when we watched the wonderful movie Ethos, which has this cameo by Bill Spaceman Lee, the legendary pitcher, I misremembered. I thought it was Bill Lee who pitched a no-hitter on acid. That is not the case. It was Doc Ellis in 1970 for the Pirates. And anyway, a lot of people wrote in to say that I'd made that error. So thank you.
I was at a baseball game in Japan when you made that error. And I will have to report back on the experience of watching Japanese professional baseball, which was very fun. But I'm glad I was not there for that, because I doubt I would have caught it. And then when the emails came in, I would have been like, oh, damn it, I did know that.
Mm-hmm.
Minecraft, the sandbox game that launched in 2011, is the best-selling video game of all time. 170 million people play it every single month. These facts will either be extremely obvious to you if you live with people of Minecrafting temperament and age, as I do, or perhaps a little more obscure if you do not, as I suspect Dana and Steve do not. Now, this cube-based game that lets players either build fantastical structures or fight zombies or do other things, fly, depending on what mode you're playing, it has become a Minecraft movie. Directed by Jared Hess of Napoleon Dynamite fame and starring Jack Black and Jason Momoa, the movie has some zany charms, and it is bringing teens to the movie theater in droves in a kind of participatory chant along with the film delirium and enthusiasm, which is novel at least, and has helped the film make $500 million globally so far and become the top grossing film of the year. Let's start by listening to a clip from the trailer.
We came across the Nether. A place with no joy or creativity at all. You! What are you making? Oh! If they get their way, this beautiful world and everything in it will wither and die.
Bio con Dios. It means goodbye, brother.
No, it doesn't.
Don't look at her. It does.
All right, Dana, you're our film critic. You have to go sit down in front of films and make sense of them. What sense did you make of this block-headed jamboree?
I mean, this is a week where I feel like, even though I am the film critic, you're the one who should go first because you have some sense of how this relates to the Minecraft game and the actual universe of Minecraft building. I mean, I have to say that for me, this movie was an hour and 41 minutes of just complete head scratching, at times associated with giggles, and at times associated with boredom, and at times with just appreciation of the silly design and color world that it existed in. But I have absolutely no idea what was going on or why this is one of the world's most successful movies right now. I will say that I am thankful to it for saving the box office. And I just had to note that a Hollywood publication that I follow sent an email about last week's box office with the following wonderful subject line: Minecraft, Jesus lead Q2 box office resurgence. Because apparently a movie that only the sort of Christian portion of the market is watching about The Last Supper and this movie are the two movies that we have to turn to for theatrical projection to continue.
Well, it's the season for such things, I suppose.
But that's just turning it back on you, Julia. Like, I do want to know, what is your own experience with Minecraft, which I know you've played with your sons. I know they saw the movie before you saw it, I believe. And I really want to hear something from the angle of both kids and parents of kids who have any relationship to the game.
Well, I will come around to that, but I'm curious, did you guys see it in theaters full of children, or did you see screenings, or what was their participation and elation in the screenings you went to? Steve, what about you?
I saw it in a full theater filled with kids. A lot of little kids play video games, apparently, like practically pre-verbal kids are totally familiar with Minecraft for some reason. Who knows? But there were a lot of very, very small children there, but a range of ages, and they walked away fan serviced. They were delighted, and there was a lot of interaction. There was no popcorn throwing, as I'd been led to expect, but when the chicken jockey appeared, there was a burst of spontaneous applause.
Yeah, there was a lot of clapping in my screening. Like, basically, anytime anybody did or achieved anything, the crowd erupted in woos. Dana, what about yours?
I wish I'd had that experience. I ended up having to see it at 6:00 on a Monday, which is not a time a lot of people would choose to take their kids to the movies. And it was a nearly empty, very small theater that had a couple families in it. But no, in fact, if anything, I think the bizarreness that I was referring to, the fact that I just sort of sat there in confusion for the entire movie, was only augmented by the fact that there was virtual silence in the theater. So although people did seem excited afterwards, there was applause when the movie ended, even though there hadn't been a lot of interaction during it.
Steve, did this movie make any sense to you? Did you find any joy or pleasure in it?
Those are two separate questions. It made no sense to me, and I found some joy and pleasure in it. And it just goes to show you that where your expectations are set going in determines the quality of the experience in overwhelming ways. I mean, I went in like they could not have been more rock bottom. Too often these days, I walk in neutral and walk out enraged. This time I walked in enraged. Maybe that's the secret. And I walked out pleasantly salved, S-A-L-V-E-D, however you pronounce that word. I thought it had enough giggles, had the courage of its own weird, goofy charm. I forgot it was a Jack Black kind of quasi-vehicle along with Momoa. The weird sort of twinship of those two I thought was kind of wonderful. The goggle-eyed, weird overconfidence of Black and the funnily self-deprecating, self-doubting, self-undermining Momoa. I thought the writing was just sharp enough. And you know what it didn't try to be? It didn't try to be a real movie in ways that I thought were quite successful. Like, I thought the ways in which it gestured at real moviness were successful because its reach never exceeded its grasp. And I was happy to be surrounded by, like, elated children. I walked out, like, pleasantly surprised.
I am delighted to hear that. I also was charmed by this movie. And I will say, so my boys went with a gaggle of 4 of their friends. So, 6, 12-year-olds on a solo trip to the mall. They're just old enough to independently roam some of Southern California's finer malls. So they went and saw it the first weekend, and then one of my sons agreed to come with me and see it again, which was fun to see it like with a true partisan, someone who spent hours and hours and hours in this game. And the crowd was extremely rowdy in a sweet way. Again, nobody dumped any slushies on us. We'd sort of been hyped by seeing some of the videos that have gone viral of like people shouting chicken jockey or throwing popcorn at the screen. And in fact, as we went into the theater, a couple of 15-year-olds ahead of us were getting slow. Their bag was getting searched by the ticket scanner, and they were kind of having a little chat with her. And she was like, I just have to make sure you don't have like a live chicken in here. And we were like, what is going to happen in this screening? Like the levels of participatory goofiness have gone to peaks. And my son said that the amount of kind of clapping and excitement was way amped up from when he saw it the first weekend. So I think even just the sense that this is a movie that you go to clap and to be excited and to shout chicken jockey has gathered steam even within the last 7 days since the first weekend. And I think my son was kind of delighted to see it in the more exuberant crowd, which to me seemed like mostly tween and teen, which was interesting. Like, I do think that's a demographic you don't see a ton at the box office. And there were some under 8s, but it was a lot of like 8 to 16 type people, mostly boys, but a lot of girls too. I thought this movie works somehow, largely because of Jack Black and Jason Momoa. There's also a pair of orphans who run around wide-eyed, and Danielle Brooks is along for the ride as a realtor / friend / mobile zoo operator, which tonally will give you a sense of the world that this is operating in. I hadn't seen a Jack Black vehicle in a long time, and it was fun to be in his maniacal presence.
Yeah, to me, by far, the best parts of the movie were when Jack Black burst into song. Those moments were far too few and far too short. It made me wish the movie had been a full-on musical. And I did note in the credits at the end that Jack Black either wrote solo or co-wrote all of the little ditties that he bursts into. Those were the moments to me that the movie really took off, because I love Tenacious D, his kind of parody music group, and just love him as that kind of presence. But yeah, seeing this and reading a little bit about his career in recent years made me realize that he's kind of become a children's entertainer, right? He's the voice of Kung Fu Panda, which just had its 4th installment, which was a huge hit. He was in the Super Mario Brothers movie, which I think you guys talked about on a week that I wasn't on the show. And he's kind of become this voiceover king because he's so comfortably exists in the world of children, right? I mean, as we saw in School of Rock, the Richard Linklater movie, where only Jack Black could have made that part work. Something about Jack Black plus being very silly with and for kids is a magic that seems to work. I don't think that this movie is quite up to the standard of what Jack Black can do in that space, or what Jason Momoa can do, honestly. I think he's been funnier in other movies, and I'm not surprised that he was funny in this one. I mean, this was kind of an underperforming movie, but I appreciate that it threw itself so completely into the weird blocky logic of Minecraft. And we haven't talked at all about how it looked. And this also, Julia, may end up throwing back to you, who's actually witnessed the game. But just the idea of a universe where everything is cubical is inherently comical and silly. So the cubicle pigs, the cubicle trees and bushes and mushrooms of that world, and also the silly fact that the magical orb that everybody needs in order to pass through portals, etc., in this movie is actually a cube, but they keep calling it an orb. It's extremely absurd. And again, like jokes like that give you an idea of what you can expect from this movie.
Yeah. So my sons have both played a lot of Minecraft. There was a period during the pandemic where we would play too. We would do like family Minecraft time, which there's creator mode where there are no zombies coming to kill you and you just get to build cool stuff. And then there's survival mode where the sun comes and goes every, frequently. And whenever it's nighttime, various things that I don't know the exact names for, but creepers and zombies and other things come and try and kill you, and you have to protect yourself by building structures and killing them, and it gets a bit more video gamey. I've only played in the creator world where you have like this palette of types of material, and some of them are real like wood or pine, and some of them are fake like ice glass or whatever. I'm making that one up, and then they each make a cube that looks different or has different properties, and you just kind of build them in the manner that the movie shows, and it is fun. I mean, the film tries to do a little bit of like Lego movie type, like, are you a creative builder, and does the world have room for creative builder types, and the power of creativity, yada, yada, yada. Like, it's a very light toe touch on that. I do think the game, that's not just a gloss in terms of what the power of the game is. Like, it really is a place where you can build entire worlds, build universes. And I remember, that first Lego movie, which was such a revelation in the, to me, at least, in the world of like these games based on inanimate objects / toys / unpeopled worlds could be good. And that one so clearly was like, the bad people don't want you to create, but you can create. And I don't know, I couldn't tell, if any of that would make any sense to someone who hadn't played the game. It was very skeletally laid out and probably better for not being hit too hard. But that did strike me. And just the sheer goofiness of the world that gets built is one of the pleasures of both the game, and I think the movie did a pretty good job capturing it.
Yeah, I guess I wish that it had been a little bit better on that front. We know it can be done, right? I mean, we know from the Lego movie and from Dungeons and Dragons, I would say as well, that something that seems like it's just a game that wouldn't make any sense in a narrative context can not only be turned into a narrative, but be turned into a narrative that makes you think about the game. And that I know happened to me with Dungeons and Dragons, which I've never played, but which, watching the movie of it, I sort of felt like, oh, I see now how the rules and the constrictions of the game are becoming part of this narrative flow. I think this movie could have set its sights a little higher in terms of making the logic of Minecraft intelligible to non-players. But it didn't want to do that. It didn't care about doing that. And it's a huge success without doing that because of how many people are players. So that's somewhat of a quibble.
Steve, how about you? Did you feel like the Minecraft mechanics came through in any interesting way?
I suppose it did, Julia, but I kind of came at it from another angle, which was the silliness and goofiness and seeming lack of ambition of the movie was a testament to the work and ingenuity that had gone in solving a problem with, one can imagine, a supremely high degree of difficulty, which is actually doing the fan service that would get the hordes to come and see this film while making something, plausibly movie-like. And so it was less about like, well, how do you play Minecraft and how do you take a video game with these obvious parameters and turn it into something plotted with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And, I thought they did a very good job of that. Even though I never figured out like exactly what Minecraft was and how you played it. I didn't care about that.
Well, and I will say, I mean, as longtime listeners will know, my experience of video games is minimal, but the world itself is, it's maybe more like Legos than Super Mario, but it really, like, you show up in the world and you're like, what should I do? And there isn't a pink lamb to tell you what to do. Like, it is just like, hey, you could build something, you could walk around, you could fly, you could look over here, you could look over there. Like, it is really quite open in a way where, several of the reviews noted that this is called a Minecraft movie rather than the Minecraft movie, and that seemed not just toward an ambition for there to be more of these movies, although I think we can expect now that there will be, but at the notion that the world is so infinitely explorable and buildable that you could have made 20 different movies as the first Minecraft movie, and this just happens to be the one that got built. I mean, it's funny, like the lightweightness of it and the almost disposability of it squares with the ethos of the world, where it's just like very easy to construct things and knock them down, or construct things and then wander over to a different patch of land and build them again. And one of the fundamental delights of Minecraft is the ease of labor, right? Like building things is hard, but in Minecraft it's not. And then once you put in enough work and gain enough skill, it is you begin to be able to build things that are complicated or take a bunch of time, or you have to, again, this is beyond my grasp of the kinetics of the game, but you mine things and they give you specific stones that do specific things, and that you can get to a place where you've built something that doesn't feel as disposable as all the things I've built there. But the lightweightness of the construction of the film, I think, is true to the spirit of the game in a lot of ways. And maybe that's part of what makes the whole thing work for the fan base, is like they're seeing something that they recognize, or they recognize the delight of it. All right, well, the film is a Minecraft movie, and you can go and shout chicken jockey at it as well if you so desire. Many, many others have, and seem like they will continue to do so.
Smell that smell. La 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 lava, chicken. Steve's lava chicken, yeah, it's tasty as hell. Ooh, mamacita, now you're ringing the bell. Crispy and juicy, now you're having a stack. Ooh, super spicy, it's a lava attack.
If there's one thing to learn from the entertainment industry, it's just how easy it is to earn a reputation, even if it doesn't reflect who celebrities really are. For example, everybody thinks that Discover is a card that isn't widely accepted, but in reality, it's accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. Yeah, 99%. So maybe now you'll think twice before judging a book by its cover. Unless it's a celebrity cookbook, in that case, judge away. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report, learn more at discover.com/creditcard.
This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. At Saks.com, it's easy to find your new spring vibe. Whether it's refreshing your whole wardrobe or shopping for a vacation, Saks.com can make it fun and inspiring. Saks.com is personalized with arrivals from brands picked just for you, so it's easy to find inspiration for your everyday. You can shop for anything on your agenda, like a larger-than-life Balenciaga bag for work or a Zimmermann dress for an upcoming wedding. Find inspiration for your personal style every day at Saks.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states and situations.
All right, on to our final topic. On Monday, 6 women set out to, as Katy Perry memorably put it in an interview with Elle, put the ass back in Astronaut by taking a ride with Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos' private space travel company. 6 women, convened by Bezos' fiancée Lauren Sanchez, rode together in what the company called the first all-female space mission since a Soviet woman did it in 1963. Was this a historic feminist expedition or a ludicrous PR stunt? Before we tackle that question, let's listen to a bit of the Blue Origin live stream of the day. In this clip, we're going to hear the voiceover from the Blue Origin funded commentators and the ringing of bells as the 6 women depart from their ready room into the capsule to prepare for countdown to liftoff. They all walk along and ring a bell. You may have seen the memes of Gayle King looking extremely nauseous and daunted as she rings her bell. But let's listen to the clip.
And here they come. Here we go. Loading into the capsule.
And the significance here of the bell, and I should note before I have you explain that, each crew names themselves. They have named themselves the 6 taking up space as each one is ringing a bell. And the significance of that is what, Ariane?
This is one of our traditions. All astronauts throughout history in various programs have had their traditions. For us, we always want our astronauts to ring the bell. Above there, you see, light this candle. Those were the last words that Alan Shepard said right before he went to space. Alan Shepard, of course, the namesake of our vehicle. He was the first American into suborbital space.
I am trying to even think of the appropriate verse question. As a pioneering woman yourself.
Putting the ass back in podcasting?
Yes. As a woman who famously put the ass back in podcasting. Because I guess men don't have asses. Like,
actually, that is where I want to start my response. That was the most embarrassing mission statement I have ever heard from anyone setting out on any mission. And it really underscored how this supposedly feminist, I mean, just a scholar of feminism would go to town on the entire marketing and presentation of this vanity space flight, because it was being put forth by the participants and, you know, everybody sort of hyping it in the media as if it were some great break for womankind. And every single one of the passengers seems like they trivialized it themselves by their presentation of it. And putting the ass in astronaut, I know we can't stop saying it, but what does that do besides make women into just like pieces of ass in space? But however it's presented, this entire journey is nothing but that, because it's 11 minutes long. It serves no scientific purpose. And the women who keep presenting themselves as the crew, you know, Lauren Sanchez's Blue Origin crew that she assembled, like Brad Pitt putting together his Ocean's 11 crew or something, are not crew at all. They're cargo. They're just literally ballast. That's not even ballast, because ballast is supposed to be in the ship and serves a purpose. They're just, you know, tourists being transported to space in order to have, I guess, an experience for themselves, goodie for them that they're in this, you know, echelon of wealth that allows such a thing, but gives nothing back to the earth whatsoever. And the whole thing made me feel very depressed and sad. I mean, if it had happened, this is not unrelated to what we said about the new Jon Hamm show on Apple, but if this had happened prior to the 2024 presidential election and the world that we now find ourselves in, it might have seemed a little bit more to me like, well, that's silly. That's some rich women having a silly time in space. And I'm fairly neutral on that. But especially with Bezos's fiance, Lauren Sanchez, being sort of the commander of the mission, i.e. the person who is married to the guy who owns the company and therefore can assemble her famous friends to go into space. It just made me think about, you know, oligarchy and the wealth industrial tech complex that rules all of our lives. And it made me enraged that this ever existed.
Yeah, the ludicrous mismatch between the claims that this set of women and the Blue Origin PR apparatus, which kudos to them for achieving media saturation. I mean, the point of this flight was marketing, and I think mission accomplished. But the like obtuseness of them and their claims, most of them, paired with what actually happened, which is like, this is essentially travel journalism, right? Like it's a junket. It's a junket. It's like a gigantic, expensive junket. They've been invited for free to do something that's usually expensive and tell their story so that other people might want to pay the money to do it themselves, and to look cute doing it. And the disjunct is pretty frictive. Anyway, Steve, how about you? You signing up for one of these flights?
It's amazing. If you had said, how can you take everything bad about the world and compress it into the smallest volume of space possible, I don't think you could have done better than that rocket the other day. I mean, it's just absolutely preposterous. Let's go through the list, right? We've covered a little bit of it already. There's feminism, supposedly, right? Well, feminism is not what's wrong with the world. That's not my point. But bullshit feminism, maybe. It's what's hilariously funny is, and very awkward for everything about this, is the fact that the communists already did this decades ago. They had an actual all-female astronaut circling the Earth on an actual mission. Space travel itself, right? Someone compared it, well, everyone sort of reflexively brings up the phrase "the right stuff." Well, the whole point of the right stuff is it took someone as corrosive and cynical as Tom Wolfe and turned him into a lovely and dignified sentimentalist. The only time in his career that I can think of when he wrote the right stuff, because there was something awe-inspiring and about what those men were doing. And this manages to degrade the memory of that and further elide any distinction between the real and the, and the serious and the frivolous, and the real and the simulacrum. As Dana says, it's just totally space tourism. It's a junket, as Julia says. It confuses showbiz with reality. But here's where it really, really bothers me. Like, all of that's kind of baked in, right? More importantly, what did NASA represent, right? It represented a triumph of public money and public spirit over private interests. And this is just absolutely the opposite of that. Space travel, as funded by private capital amassed in the hands of multi-billionaires, the very, very uppermost 1% of the 1% of the 1%, and then pretending that somehow their entrepreneurial zeal is necessary for this kind of heroism, elides honorable things that happened relatively recently in history. But it also points to, in addition to the fact that this man has that money, how he made the money, how he's ruining the Washington Post, how, his labor conditions are repellent. On top of that, also, why are these billionaires preoccupied with space travel? Well, one thing is there's just little boys who want like fun toys to play with. But the other reason is that they do ultimately see this planet as doomed and as inevitably disposable, and that some combination of environmental despoliation and or nuclear war is going to destroy it. Therefore, we need new planets. And this sense of exploration is bound up in a hope that we can treat Mother Earth as disposable and as kind of a blithe consumerist way as we treat everything else. I find this just so profoundly revealing and depressing about what it reveals. It's just like, I can't even with this. It's just really sad, is what it is. It's just incredibly sad.
It is. It's interesting to see Gayle King in the mix. So the women are Lauren Sanchez as the convener / fiance / commissioner of the snug, ass-flattering designer spacesuits. Katy Perry, musician who is in need of a rebrand. Gayle King, who is, famously Oprah's best friend, but also like a legitimate news host who works for a real network. And there were some questions raised in the media press about the media ethics of accepting an expensive trip like this and kind of what the disclosures and terms are in the policies. And I want to come back around to Gayle King. And then 3 less famous women, 2 of them who had sort of backgrounds in science, but were not astronauts, and one of whom was a filmmaker. And part of what was discordant about watching the proceedings, and particularly watching when they landed, is that it's true that the real human experience of doing this, I'm sure, was scary, momentous, somewhat serious, and awe-inspiring. And like when they come back down, they all seem, if you listen to the interviews of them coming out of the capsule, there's some goofy performance from the likes of Katy Perry, but they seem genuinely overwhelmed, moved, and inspired. And I remember one time I was watching a friend was on, I think it was The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. It might have been the Colbert Report, but on one of those shows, and I went to the taping, and he was on to talk about his book, and the other guest was Buzz Aldrin that night. So in the green room, it was me, my journalist friend, a little like wicker basket of granola bars, and Buzz Aldrin. And I have like never been so awestruck in my life. I just was like, I can't believe I'm sitting on this couch with this guy who, like, I mean, space exploration is truly mind-boggling and awe-inspiring, and this crazy testament to what humans can achieve. And so watching these people have an experience of genuine awe crusted under these grotesque trappings was so discordant and so strange. And Gayle King, who is, a professional host and thus a professional kind of performer and connector of emotional responses to things, right? Like that is what she has spent years doing, is like being a person that the viewer at home can interpret the world through. She was sort of the most scared. She's apparently afraid of flying. Watching her go through this, the meme of her looking like she's going to puke as she rings the bell is like going to be one for the ages. Like, she truly looks terrified. And when she comes down, they say, "How does it feel to be an astronaut?" And she's like, "I'm going to reject that term, but it was a flight." Like, she has some credibility still attached to her as she's processing this experience. And I was thinking about other privatizations. Like, it's true that there's an arc sometimes where government invests in technology and develops it, and then eventually private companies come in. Like, that doesn't have to be the end of the world. But in this case, pairing this with the complete disassembly of our ability to use public funding to solve human problems and advance human achievement, and particularly to advance science, is so galling. And it is, you worry that poor Gayle King is going to explode in the capsule. It's exciting when they land. It's kind of amazing that they've got this company that can do this thing. It's kind of absurd that the rocket looks so much like a penis. Like, truly nothing has ever been more phallic in the history of the world.
Except perhaps the Amazon logo itself.
The Amazon logo is phallic?
You've never noticed this? It's a curved penis.
Whoa. I can learn. Look at the human learning that's coming from the space mission. Oh, man. I don't know. Obviously the world is in a strange and dark place, but this was one of those moments where you're like, I guess we're already in idiocracy. Like, I guess we're in idiocracy. Like, the slide towards living in idiocracy has begun.
Yeah, I feel you, Julia. I don't know what to really add to that, except to say, the importance of Lauren Sanchez in this endeavor. And I should say that Lauren Sanchez's kind of list of accomplishments, I guess being a TV journalist is probably what she is most known for, besides being Bezos's fiance. But her job titles are also listed in a piece Amanda Hess wrote for the New York Times on this Blue Origin flight as aviation businesswoman, because I guess she can buy planes with her money, philanthropist, because she can give money to people because she has so much money, and children's book author, because everybody rich and famous can now write a crappy children's book that has absolutely no market interest except that it's written by that person. Anyway, that list of her credits and just her prominence in this endeavor just made me think about a particular angle of our current 2025 flavor of dystopia, which is the world seems to be composed of just these few people now that we have to think about constantly. Every single day you have to look at pictures of and think about Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, who's always standing next to his, va-va-voom fiance. It just seems like there's like six rich people in the world, and that's all we get to talk or think about, and they control everything to an absurd degree. And it just leaves the rest of the 8 billion of us to sort of look at the images of those 6 people going to space and controlling our government and, just, I guess, ruling the entire world. And I'm really, really sick of those 6 people. So this just made me realize that Lauren Sanchez is unfortunately going to be one of them for some time to come.
Well, obviously the class and economic piece of this is paramount, but the feminism part is depressing too. I loved in Amanda Hess's piece, which is worth a read, that she pointed out that it's not even correct to say that they're finally bringing glam to space, and that in fact, women in space have had to figure out what kind of lipstick and hair would work in space since they started going, because they know that since they're women, they're going to be photographed and their images are going to be scrutinized. And part of what you do when you go to space is become an ambassador for the concept of space travel, and thus your image matters. So the kind of like idiotic assertion that like hotness is what women can contribute to the world, and then also that no one's ever thought to do it before, because obviously those lady scientists must have been, tough to look at, is so so terrible, just so dreadful.
It's vehemently anti-feminist. I mean, every bit of the coverage of this flight that I've seen, especially the L profile that we were talking about, in which Katy Perry made that statement about the ass and astronaut, but all of them said incredibly stupid things, I thought, just is accomplishing the exact opposite of making people feel like women are equal partners in space travel who can do anything. And it really, really plays into, all these strange techno-bro fantasies about colonizing space, because it's sort of like, we got our women folk and they're looking good.
Got to bring some hotties. Well, right. Like, surely it is an achievement that Blue Origin as a company can do this, right? Like, Steve is making quite a face. I'm sorry. I think it is
to do what the Soviets did 50 years ago, like literally a culture with no private
I'm just
enterprise
saying, I
was
wouldn't
able to
know.
do 50, 60 years ago. I don't see that.
I don't know that the technology is exactly the same in terms of where the rockets go and all this and that. In any event, I wouldn't know how to do it. And surely some smart people had to figure out how to do it and make them not all explode in space. Like, I consider that an achievement, like harder than making toast. Okay. And probably harder than making a toaster. Surely Blue Origin employs some women who do some of that. I mean, maybe that's a generous assumption, but like, if they're really hoping to highlight women in STEM, is there not some woman who works at Blue Origin who actually was responsible for the whole thing landing properly, or the science of it at all? Like, they also kept saying they wanted to highlight women in STEM. And it's like, so women take rides in things that STEM builds? Like, what do you mean women in STEM? Like, they're literally inside a technological machine. But like, they're not. And some of them have scientific backgrounds, but I don't know, just the way it was presented, it was so vacuous.
I mean, if they care so much about women in STEM, maybe they could speak out against the fact that the Trump administration, aided by money of people like Bezos, is destroying STEM itself, not to mention the place of women in it, and that the university system is on the verge of crumbling.
Well, with the end game of what? Of transferring what was a public good to private hands, right? This is a proof of concept, right? You don't need NASA to get to space, even though we're doing what NASA did with one hand tied behind its back 60 years ago, even though we're just replicating the very easiest of space flights. That's the difference. The difference is it's just privately funded, which is itself a joke because, I can tell you that public subsidy played a huge role in getting that rocket out, including just the treasury of IP that they're calling upon, which was funded by universities on the public dime. I mean, the whole thing is a form of hyper-capitalist kabuki in ways that are nauseating, frankly.
All right. Well, let's all go ring the bell. As nauseated as Gayle King was before her flight, the flight was Blue Origin on the New Shepard. A bunch of women took a ride. You can check it out if you so desire. All right. I think it's time to endorse, Dana.
All right. Well, fittingly, because this has been a week in which we all found ourselves, even though we weren't taking on any explicitly political topic, we all found ourselves shaking our fists at the current state of American politics. I'm going to endorse something I've been waiting to endorse, Julia, until you got back to town, because I thought that you would want to know about it too, and maybe ask Steve about it, which is Steve's other podcast. He has soft launched. I mean, at least in relation to our podcast, it's a soft launch because he never announced it. But a couple of months ago, in February of 2025, Steve soft launched a podcast called What Rough Beast that is hosted by him and Virginia Heffernan, who I believe has been a guest on our show, but she is, a well-known journalist, currently mainly writing for Wired, somebody who did a podcast called Trumpcast during the first Trump administration with Slate that for me was indispensable listening. It was the place where I went to make sense of what at the time was the place I went to make sense of what was at the time the indecipherable chaos of Trump. I feel like that chaos is now very decipherable, but it continues unabated. And with the second administration, Virginia has tried to do something different. And she and Steve got together to create What Rough Beast, whose title obviously comes from the Yeats poem that we all can't stop quoting because the falcon can no longer hear the falconer. But Steve, tell us a little bit about What Rough Beast and how you and Virginia got it going.
Well, first of all, Dana, I really appreciate this. I'm very touched. I didn't know this was coming, and it is really seriously appreciated. Thank you for listening to it and mentioning it. But Yeah, the idea was, the reason why we picked that part of the poem, which I think a lot of people know, it's the first part of the line that Didion uses for her book, Slouching Towards Bethlehem. What rough beast its hour come round at last, slouches toward Bethlehem to be born. And that was sort of this double question is like, what's going on? What weird, horrible political beast is being born in the second go-around of Trump and Trumpism? How bad is it going to be? How would you label it? What are its historical analogs? At what point in the progress of loss of political freedom are we, to sort of narrate that in real time? But the double meaning of the title of the podcast was, what rough beast is being slouching towards Bethlehem to be born? In the poem, that's Jesus. It's the birth of Christ, right? And so what's not that we're about to get that, but what form of political salvation might arise out of the rubble of Trump 2? And so the idea was to have one eye on what opportunity arises when things are blown up and all the path dependencies eliminated. And as horrible and grotesque as that's going to be, and it could be a year, it could be 5 years, it could be 40 years before this country recovers. But at some point, something new has to be born. And so the question was to ask what that might be.
It's so exciting. Congratulations, Steve. And I'm glad you waited for me to join it. And obviously everyone on this show and who listens to this show knows what a great talker Steve is. But I still remember taking a car ride with Virginia on the way to an early Slate retreat. It might have been the one where I first met you, Dana. But somehow I got put into a carpool with Virginia and our then advice columnist and the advice columnist's husband, who was a surgeon. And Virginia is literally one of the world's best question askers and talkers I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. And I remember she grilled this surgeon for the whole hour and a half car ride about what it was like to be a heart surgeon, and was like, so when you open up their bodies, and this is a good segue to our bonus segment on the Pit, to people's, a question I remember her asking is, are people's insides as different as their faces? Like, are hearts as different from other hearts as people's noses are from each other? Like, what an incredible question. And in fact, they are. And he described doing a surgery once where someone's heart was just on the other side. I was like, I aspire to this level of conversational delight and curiosity. So Steve plus Virginia is no doubt going to be a really wonderful combo.
And maybe just to orient our listeners, because there's quite a few episodes out now, if you want to see what the podcast What Rough Beast does that's different from your average political podcast, I recommend maybe as a starter one called Literature as Political Resistance. That's, I think, the third to last one or something. It was a few weeks ago, in which Virginia and Stephen talked to a Columbia professor who's also the editor-in-chief of the Public Books website about literature and resistance, about sort of looking into literary history for models for either what's happening now or what might come next. It's really a fascinating conversation. And
that was Nick Dames.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was wonderful. I mean, he was a wonderful interview. I could not have enjoyed talking to him more.
I just love that you and Virginia are doing this, Steve, and just know that I'll be out there listening.
Thanks, Dana. Appreciate it.
Marvelous. Stephen, what have you got?
So I used to live over on Hudson Street back in my premarital days, in the 90s. And it was right down the block, less than a block away from the White Horse Tavern. And I swear to God, I would walk by it once a day at least and overhear someone saying, yeah, that's where Dylan Thomas drank himself to death. And it's like a mecca for global drinkers now and, would-be literati to go to. And I guess its most famous patron was Dylan Thomas in the right at the end of his life. And in fact, he did, I believe the story is he had his 32nd or something shot of whiskey, turned the shot glass over and slammed it down on the table and said, that gentleman, I believe, is the record, and walked out on the sidewalk and died. Just having it turn into a kind of touristy thing was a little bit of a bummer. But I found that there was another great patron during his long and sadly agonized dissipation phase of the White Horse Tavern, which was Delmore Schwartz, who's just had, of course, he's been dead for a very long time, but A Collected Poems has come out, giving many, many writers, many, many very good poetry critics, an opportunity to go back over Schwartz's career. And just very briefly, the thing about Schwartz is that no one came out of the canon more faster or more incandescently, more beautifully than Schwartz, who was a very young man, published a bunch of poems and then also a set of short stories called In Dreams Begin Responsibilities, which the title story of which is one of the most beautiful things ever written by an American. And some of his poems are extraordinary. And he was very beautiful. He's very striking looking, looked like a young Orson Welles and just couldn't fulfill his early promise and ended up a kind of famous dissipate and a talent wasted. But late in life, he wrote a poem that I wasn't familiar with, and it's called The First Night of Fall and Falling Rain. And let me just read a little bit of it. It's actually quite beautiful, and many reviewers are quoting it to show that while the flame had almost entirely gone out, it wasn't totally snuffed, even up to the end. The poem ends with him saying, staring empty and without thought beyond the rising mists of the emotion of causeless sadness, how suddenly all consciousness leaped in spontaneous gladness, knowing without thinking how the falling rain, outside, all over, in slow, sustained, consistent vibration, all over outside, tapping window, streaking roof, running down runnel and drain, waking a sense once more of all that lived outside of us, beyond emotion, for beyond the swollen, distorted shadows and lights of the toy town and the Vanity Fair of waking consciousness! Exclamation point. It's a lovely poem. It made me really want to pick up this collection, but I highly, highly recommend that poem. I also recommend that initial short story collection, In Dreams Begin Responsibilities, is just eternal. It's one of the holy books. So check out Something by Delmore Schwartz.
Great endorsement. Thank you, Steve. My endorsement this week is an endorsement plus a quibble. We talked last spring about Everybody's in LA with John Mulaney, the sort of 6-episode or 5-episode live talk show experiment that John Mulaney conducted on Netflix during the Netflix is a Joke Comedy Festival. I think it was in June. They gave the man a show, which I think we suggested they do at the time because we found that project so specific and weird and delightful, and like, what if a cable access show but John Mulaney but on Netflix? And in particular, I responded to its portrait of Los Angeles. The show is back. It's got a new name, Everybody's Live with John Mulaney. It remains great, and it remains great that John Mulaney has a vehicle, just as a brief, light evidence of his style of humor. The tag for it on Netflix is John Mulaney conducts the first ever celebrity sit-down talk show. So he's full of charming self-awareness, as usual. So my endorsement is, it's great. You should check it out. This show should survive and thrive and be on all the time. And the kind of mix and pairings and risks that he's taking are really fun. And they've worked out a couple of the kinks from last time, and they've persisted with some of the fun tidbits, including having Richard Kind as his sort of sidekick and having Samo, the delivery robot, as a robotic sidekick. Much of the bones of it is still there. Apparently, and he makes this clear in the monologue of the first episode, Netflix made him change the name and de-LAify it. And apparently people didn't like its LA-ness, and they wanted it to just be a generic talk show that happens to be set in LA. And he describes in the monologue of one of the first episodes having asked them to retest it after the fires to see if maybe after the conflagration that beset the city, Americans would have some more sympathy for LA or some willingness to watch a show called Everybody's in LA with John Mulaney. And the answer was no. And so it's just Everybody's Live. And he sometimes cuts away to real people in the way that he did around LA in the first one, and they're sort of everywhere. And I'm bummed about it. It was so much of what was good about it was the very, very, very particular lens on LA right now. And I am sad that the marketers won, because the show is weird enough and specific enough that I wish it had gotten to keep its full specificity. So John Mulaney's show is back on the air. It's still great. Check it out, and send Netflix a note that they're dumb to have cut LA out of it. All right. You will find links to some of the things we talked about today on our show page. That's slate.com/culturefest. And you can email us at culturefest@slate.com. Our introductory theme music is by the composer Nicholas Bertel. Our producer today is Kevin Bendis. For Stephen Metclaf and Dana Stevens, reunited at last, I'm Julia Turner. I've returned from Japan as Dana Stevens, actually. We've had a body swap. In any event, we're all here, whatever our names are, and we're back. And we thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week.